Sailesh, welcome to JarXchange. Thank you for giving us the time. I know you flew day before yesterday from US.
It's actually yesterday.
Yesterday?
Yes,
Okay.
yesterday 2 a.m.
Got it. When did you move to US, Sailesh?
I moved right after I graduated from IIT, so 93.
93. How many people in your batch at that time wanted to go to the West?
So our batch was one of the first batches where the split was less to the US than previous years. So, this was a common sort of theme at that time that a lot of people would go to the US. But our batch was one of the first where there were equal, if not slightly more people going to the IIMs or to first-time jobs than to the US. So I would say maybe 35%-ish.
And that percentage is very low today. Where I'm coming to is that what are your thoughts on what we call as brain drain or reverse brain drain? Do you think more and more entrepreneurs, more and more graduates from premier institutes are now building in India? And are your friends coming back to India and building?
So we're seeing, interestingly, sort of three modes happening. There's obviously the first set of people who are not even considering going to the US or any other country for that matter, just saying, hey, this is our country, we know what we want to do. And they're not even waiting to graduate. They're beginning to build right as they get into college and they find the right set of people and the problems and so on. So I've heard of enough dorm stories of people starting, startups in like third or fourth year of college. The second group of people are people who have decided to come to a foreign country, either the US or Australia or UK, but with a clear understanding that they will go back and build in India, because they feel like there are things that they gain, a global perspective that they gain by coming out and being part of these ecosystems. It also allows them to build network in terms of people, in terms of understanding, and some things also are learnable more in some of these different ecosystems. But they come with a very clear understanding that they're going to come back and they're going to build in India, or for the globe for that matter. And then the third group of people is the one that was the traditional definition of brain drain, where people were saying they want to leave India and go settle in other countries. That number is relatively small, as I think you rightfully observed, but it's also a function of what their aspirations are. So there are still obviously certain things that are harder to do in India. So for example, if you're doing something in fundamental sciences, the top research institutes of US and Europe are still better places to continue that kind of research and so on. So I think there is, for them, the being outside is the better match in some sense. In terms of reverse brain drain, I think what's happening is less reverse of a brain drain and more of an opportunity-seeking behavior, where those folks have spent time in the US, learned their skills. In fact, I was talking to a friend the other day, and they were like, do you know that everybody in almost all the top semiconductor companies are actually Indians?
Yeah.
Right? And now that there is this enormous support for semiconductors in India, they're like, this is a great opportunity. And so the brain drain is not reverse as much as they're coming to India to seek opportunity that they feel they're uniquely qualified for. So, and I think that's phenomenally exciting, because it brings together the right match of opportunity and ability and skill. And they're coming at it with a sense of both knowledge and respect, as in, it's not like, oh, we've learned all of this in the US and we know how to do this and we're going to come build this in India. They've realized that, they have their part of the equation, but building in India is not that easy yet. And so they need to learn how to build a company, and building a company anywhere is hard. Building a company in India is harder than anywhere else yet.
So why don't we start with the US and India? So how about you take us through the VC ecosystem? How is it shaping up there? And how do you see the VC ecosystem shaping up in India in the last few years?
So the US ecosystem, because of its age, is a little bit more mature, right? And maturity is mainly a function of how many sort of up and down cycles you've gone through. Because I think once you go through this business, which is somewhat cyclic, you understand, what kinds of companies get built in up cycles and down cycles, and how these situations should be addressed. As an investor, when you start, you don't realize that suddenly things get hot, and so everything gets bid up. So the first instance of this was like the 2000s, when anything with the word internet in it was like crazily bid up, right? So the US luckily has gone through, I think, at least 3, if not 4 cycles. And still, there are a class of investors who are caught up in the hype and go through this. But the vast majority have remained disciplined, which I think is a good idea. But there's also a little bit to be said for going crazy, because, our business, the business of being a VC, is to capture outliers, capture something that is way out of the norm. And so it's rare to keep doing the same thing every year and expect to capture something that's an outlier. So you have to have both the courage to say when to break the rules, and the discipline to stay within the rules for the most part. Because if you don't stay disciplined, you end up losing money. But if you don't take the courage, you miss the outlier. So that's the story of VC in general. With respect to the US, like I said, more mature ecosystem, so has done well. That same level of maturity hasn't yet arrived in India, but there's been a pretty interesting development. The first crop of VCs in India, I think, were mostly sort of local chapters of global VCs. You had the Lightspeed India, Axel India, and so on. And I think those folks were trying to bring a Western understanding of how VC should operate to India. And for the most part, it did work, but there were significant gaps in that understanding. What we are seeing now is like a significantly new crop of domestic VCs. And I think that's what's super exciting, because these are folks who are not just alone understanding what investing in India, they also understand India more deeply. And I think we are, I think, at that initial stages of truly building a fantastic and vibrant VC ecosystem here.
Any thoughts on how the VC ecosystem in the West is looking at India now? Or has it changed over the past few years?
So the VC ecosystem, from almost all of the folks I speak with, look at India with sort of mixed confusion, is what I would say. And the mixture is with respect to the fact that there's so much happening in India. They have deployed capital, but they have not seen the same kind of returns that they expected. The previous instance in which they deployed capital outside of the US was China, right? And for the most part, they were able to extract a lot of value from the growth of the Chinese economy. That has not yet happened in India for them, and so they're a little bit confused. But at the same time, they can see on the ground the tremendous change that is happening, and India is on its way to becoming the 3rd largest economy in the world. So it's like there is nowhere else to deploy capital other than here at this point. Chinese growth is stalling or sputtering at this point. So India is the right place. So they're a little bit confused. And I think the reason for that confusion is, once again, a lack of understanding of fundamentally what India is about. The Chinese economy grew the way it did because it has a very strict, strong, centralized government, which can override pretty much anything and make things happen. India, while most people are not able to sort of clearly understand, is a very large, vibrant, and chaotic democracy. People have a lot of ideas and opinions, and so everything is going to take a little bit longer. But I think the more you commit to India and the more patient you are, I think India will truly deliver the promise. And that's all they really need to do. So that's what I tell my VC friends, is you just need to be a little bit more patient.
Pretty interesting answer. I wasn't expecting this, that a VC will say that there is mixed confusion, and mixed confusion is also good and bad in some ways, I understand. But how do you understand this mixed confusion and the complexities not being in India? Like I keep wondering about this. There are so many US-based VCs which are investing in India, and how does understanding of this complex confusion happen?
Well, first and foremost, you have to actually be here. So you have to come visit. So we are of Indian origin. So we obviously have a lot of common understanding of how India works. We have family, we have friends. There are VCs in the US that don't have WhatsApp. And how can you understand India if you don't have WhatsApp, right? So whereas we have had WhatsApp pretty much from day one, when everybody knew this is how we are going to communicate. So I think you have to make the effort to understand India. You cannot use your for lack of a better phrase, Western mindset and say, that's how it is here, so that's how we should be in India, because money is money and this is how no, money is money, but the ways in which economies change and transmute and how companies get built is different and local. And so the way to understand this confusion is basically to come here, spend a lot more time here, and more importantly, talk to a large variety of people. Because you get, India is truly the giant that is an elephant, right? And so you need a lot of people putting their hands on the elephant to get a sense of what this is. And even I, for all of the knowledge I have, I don't think I have a full appreciation as you have. Where you are living, you're facing the daily wins and challenges that you have. So I think more time here is what is needed. At the same time, I think also, like I said, understanding the fundamental differences between what they were using as their benchmarks, whether it was Silicon Valley or Gen AI or China or whatever, versus how India is going to deliver those returns. I think you need to understand those differences in order to reset or at least correct your expectations for India.
You mentioned we understand it better, but me and Nisha keep talking about that. So we have a customer base from all states of India. And for us, that understanding of how things work in Surat versus an Indore versus a Mysore versus a Bangalore itself is a very complex problem to solve, right? So it's not just people from the outside, but when you are building a product which caters to the mass audience, I think we ourselves keep getting surprised of how diverse India is every day.
Absolutely. And I think that diversity is actually the value of India, because I think when growth happens and it happens in such a robust fashion with so many different people, with so many different problems, challenges, mindsets, and aspirations come together to solve something, that solution looks robust, right? Take, for example, the payment infrastructure that India has developed, right? Doesn't matter if you're in Surat or Indore or Mysore or Bangalore or Visakhapatnam, right? It works.
Yeah.
It works irrespective of language. It works irrespective of location. You're in the mountains of Manipur and it'll still work, right? I think that's what makes those solutions robust. One other thing I wanted to point out, many Western observers, including investors, have been guilty of. Some people have told them India is not, 140 crore people. India is just, 7 or 8 crores in the cities, and that's it. Because those are the affluent people.
Big debate that we have.
Right. Yeah. I think that's the wrong way to think about India. Yes, these are the more affluent people. Yes, they are the ones who will immediately and quickly adopt new technology. But that's not what India is about. India is about, those 400 or 600 million people in between who have the same aspirations and who now, through technology, are getting that access. So I think that's what's exciting. That's what's missing. And so to go bring it back to the point you were asking about, I think the nuances and the details of that understanding may not be there, but I think the aspirations of somebody in Surat versus somebody in Kanyakumari are the same. They want to live a better life. They want better mobility. They want, better housing, clean water. So those things, once you understand, you really start appreciating that maybe a solution in Kanyakumari will not be the same as the one in Surat, but it'll be for the same reason, as in people wanted it that way.
Even the communication, the way you talk to people there, that can be different.
Yes.
But ultimately, as human beings, we are more aspirational. And I think
absolutely.
You're very right. So DAU farm of the world, right? That's what we've been talking about, that the monetization potential of a lot of Indian audience is very less. And that's where this is coming from, that we cater to the 7-8%, which is the affluent India. But I think as in when everyone gets on to the digital medium is when we'll realize the entire power of this. So very, very nicely put. You're saying it's more opportunities unlocking here, which is bringing people back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I think if I were to describe it, I think India is about to go through a once in a generational transition in terms of wealth creation. I mean, if the expectations of this larger country, I think that translation is going to make tremendous opportunities. In fact, I would say if you're anybody anywhere who wants to build, you should be coming to India to build because the opportunities are here.
I'm digressing, but you mentioned about the young brigade, right? How do you at Rocketship look at See, dropouts making big companies becomes a news, right? But you cannot replicate experience and what you go through in say 5, 7, 10 years of your journey. So in your model at Rocketship, which we'll talk about in detail, do you look at these two things in a very separate manner of a dropout of a 18-year-old guy making something or someone who's 42 and done a lot of things and building something?
So this is not explicitly factored into our algorithms, but it does make a difference. So are you going to trust an 18-year-old with a deep technology company where they have no experience? No. So where young people, I think, have an innate ability or sense or opportunity is in a class of companies that are very amenable to rapid growth, whether it be direct to consumer companies or whether it be online businesses that they can build. Those are all companies or ideas that you don't need a lot of background knowledge, but you just need to have either the hustle or the ability to sort of guess at where the users are going, right? So if you're a 19-year-old, generationally, you understand all what 19-year-olds and 18-year-olds and 21-year-olds want. I think you are the right person to be building that company. I don't think a 42-year-old will be able to understand that, right? But the flip side is, will you know how to build a large company? I think that's still a challenge. So I think almost everybody who we have seen in building those companies, they find the opportunity to hire the right team, the support team, because companies are not just one person, right? Companies are built by a team. You guys are part of this very successful team at Jar. That team building is one of the key skills they have to learn. And as long as they're able to translate their success into building that team to help support them, I think they will be successful. So those are the signals we get to look for, because I think just investing based on a 17 or an 18-year-old building something isn't necessarily going to pan out very well unless we can see all these other aspects. On the flip side, what does a 42-year-old do? They have a lot of deep domain expertise. But does that mean they know how to build a company either? No, I think that hustle, all of the things that the 17-year-old had also have to be there. That's why I think across the board, building companies are one of the most hardest things to do, and you need a lot of help.
Any data on the average age of the founding members of your portfolio company?
That's a good question. If I were to, I don't have the exact data, but if I were to guess at it, I would say it's in the high 20s, low 30s. I think a lot of people get a little too comfortable in their careers to want to go found, and you really have to have that drive. So we have B2B and deep tech companies in our portfolio, and those have been with slightly older founders.
Skewing that average
A little bit higher. Otherwise, it'll be in the mid-20s, I think.
Sailesh, let's shift to a very exciting topic, space tech.
Fantastic.
Very few people that I've spoken to who can go deep into this, and you've worked at NASA, and now you are investing in a lot of space tech companies. So from a layman's perspective, what are your thoughts on this sector? What are the opportunities here? If you can just briefly tell us about what it is. Or let's just go into details. We have all the time.
Well, thanks for recognizing that, because I've been a lifelong space buff since I was a kid. And so for me, it's been a dream come true, both to work at NASA and now to invest in companies that are, actually making a tremendous difference in putting things into space and literally being on the path to translating what we think of as science fiction to actual reality. So I think the sector is very interesting, and it's poised to take a significant leap forward because of a couple of things. One, of course, is the fact that technology has improved a lot, and obviously it's improving exponentially. But it also has gone to a point of inflection where we no longer think of space as the domain of nation states, where only big, large governments have the ability and the budget to launch things into space. This is something that private companies can do as well, right? And once that realization has come, that's also been a function of both cost as well as market. So now there's a tremendous appetite for, putting things into space, putting things that can unlock the secrets of Earth, allows us to communicate wherever we are and charge for it. So once the market opportunity became very clear, I think there've been a whole host of companies getting ready to serve that. But what has also been interesting is the technology underpinning that has gotten to, I wouldn't call it commoditizing, but it has gotten to modularization.
Explain
Where,
that.
yeah, so before, if you put something into space, one company or one country had to do everything, literally from rocket, boosters, engines, to payload, to telemetry, to monitoring, and even build the payload, which is satellites or whatever. Now you can actually purchase about, from 20, 30 different vendors, 90% of the thing. And so if you are good at doing one thing, which is, let's say you are good at wanting to build, analyze, and do something with ore mining satellites, right? You just go build that. And then everything else you can subcontract or contract out. So it's literally almost like a
Automobilization.
yeah, that modularization. And the one that I compare it more closer to is like AWS, right? The Amazon Web Services. Today, to build a company, I don't have to go buy a single computer other than my own personal laptop, right? Everything else is done by these service providers, from the company formation all the way out to all the compute and storage that happens. I think that's what's happening in space today, and it's accelerating even faster. And more importantly, the interesting thing about space is that it's transnational. It's not one country. So I can buy a rocket from one country, a satellite from a different country, ground management and telemetry from a third country, and all of those things come together, because this is, from the beginning, space has always been a much more collaborative arena where countries have had to collaborate. I mean, the International Space Station is an example. So this is a very interesting area. And one other concern that has reduced, which I think is also contributing, is things that go into space were always thought of as dual use potential, because unfortunately intercontinental missiles also have similar components to the same rocket that takes you to space. So there's always that concern. That concern seems to have reduced quite a bit, because now we have reduced the regulations around what can be put into space, and there is clear separation between what is an intercontinental ballistic missiles component and what's something that can put a satellite into space. And so once that fear goes away a little bit and it opens up this wide spectrum, I think a lot of innovative minds have started thinking about what else can we do, right? What should we be doing? There's also enormous opportunities. I mean, you may have seen this whole MH3, the flight that we lost, right?
Yeah.
This day and age, that should never happen.
Yeah.
Right?
It's still very difficult to understand that it happened.
It happened.
Yeah.
But the solution for it has existed for the last 15 years. We have the ability to have satellites track. I mean, if satellites are tracking us on GPS with where our cell phones are, why can't they track a big fat airplane flying, right? And so these are opportunities that are now arriving, that we can track pretty much anything there. Also, one other thing that people are realizing is the Earth is actually much bigger than we even thought of in the exploratory sense, because we have only explored the land masses.
Yeah.
The Earth is 60% or more ocean, and we haven't seen anything of what's there or what's in there, what's under there, and so on. And the space offers a very space-based view offers a very interesting way of exploring the world in some sense. So lots of opportunity, lots of excitement, and I think aspirationally people just get excited when there's new frontiers opening up in front of them.
Okay, so when we think about space tech, we think about Elon, SpaceX. Tell us beyond SpaceX what's happening.
So first, to give Elon all credit that is due to him, even though most people don't realize it, there was a lot of support that he got. First of all, his company was going to go out of business until the U.S. government gave him a $500 million, credit loan guarantee. And then a lot of the technology that is built into SpaceX came from NASA as well. In fact, a lot of my team members at NASA,
a lot of talent,
went to SpaceX. So to give all credit to, he had the vision and the ability to move that company forward with a lot of support, but that accomplishment has happened. And what that has proven is that this structure works, where you can have a private company serve the needs of both government and non-governmental customers in putting things into space. So
today a large percentage of NASA's payload is through SpaceX.
Right? Yeah. So this was also a change in the U.S. government policy, that NASA no longer be a place where true original research is done, but it be a place where money is distributed to private parties that can then do the work.
So in your time at NASA, this was not thinkable or imaginable.
Absolutely. In fact, in my time at NASA, money was directed to a very small number of contractors. You can name them in the fingers of one hand, and that people call that the military-industrial complex. There is a reason for that. But at that time, these were also folks who had demonstrated space capabilities. And so now that you have examples of private players who have shown that, I think we are off to the races. Now, anybody who has good, strong technology can prove that they can put things into space. We have investments in companies that are, without worrying about it, taking the risk of building satellites, building rocket launch vehicles, right? So I think we have gotten to a point where people are very excited by what they can do, and the governments luckily are at that place where they're stepping back, not being too worried about security and other concerns and so on. So it's a perfect positive storm of things coming together to allow this wave to happen.
But what are we trying to achieve, Sailesh? Do you think in this lifetime it is possible for humans to actually go to space? When I say humans, okay, first, why are all the billionaires taking these space trips suddenly?
Well, you have to be a kid to realize that every kid dreams of going to space who's been a science fiction fan or a space buff. And funnily enough, a lot of these billionaires, and when they were kids, were science fiction fans. So I think luckily they have the money now to realize their dreams. But billionaires aside, I think it's a.
Is it sooner than we think it is? Is the reality coming where we can have interplanetary travel?
I don't think it's sooner than we think it is, but it is coming. I think in our lifetime, maybe more so in your lifetime than mine, just to give myself a little bit of room. But I think it will happen, and it will happen mainly because I think the costs are dropping exponentially, right? This number is the one that most people doubt. It would take $1 million+ to put a kilogram into space, 25 years ago. SpaceX, on its first launch, brought that down to $100,000, which then currently is now costing them about $10,000 to $20,000, depending on the kind of payload they're. Our own, AgniKul and Skyroot, the folks here, they think that number can come down to $100 per kilogram. So where is 1 million and where is $100? If you have that kind of change in cost, I think a whole lot of things are possible. We've also, for the first time, started seeing companies that are showing us that manufacturing in space can happen. So creating space factories. Because zero-G environments are fantastic to do very fine-tuned assembly because things don't move. There is no dust. Clean rooms, well, space is one of the original clean rooms, right? So you can actually manufacture things into space. And once you have that capability added on, you don't have to lift everything from Earth. You build things in space, and then you use that as a way to transport it to other planets. So yes, I believe very much so in our lifetime, we will be traveling to other planets. We will have habitations in other planets as well.
Tell me more. Because now we're coming to applications. A lot of, if you look at social media, whenever we have such programs executed by US or by India, there is like, we have enough problems in this world. Right? A large part of not just India, but this world is living below par means, right? And what are we trying to achieve? Now you're coming to applications. So do you think this argument is valid, number one? And then I'll ask the next question.
So it's easy to say, yes, the argument is valid because yes, there are a whole lot of people on this planet who are struggling for clean water, enough food, and should not be under starvation, should not be under the fear of threat for their lives due to conflict and so on. So all of those things are true, right? We should not have those things. But to say that we should not then spend on something because we haven't solved for this, I don't think is a fair way of looking at it. For me personally, a lot of my sort of interest in space comes from how excited I was as a kid, reading science fiction books, watching movies, and so on. And so that aspiration, allowing kids to dream, I think only comes from these kinds of efforts where we take a really, really hard problem and we solve it, and then we show that we can do these things. It gives us the confidence to do these things because we aspire to. And then there's also, almost every astronaut I've sort of read what they've written have a very, very unique perspective about Earth, respect for this planet and environment. Because once you go there and you see how small we are, and we think of ourselves as very important, very big people, we are minuscule in this universe, right? And so when you see those things, you realize it. So it brings together a very different attitude. And so I think that is very much needed. And now since you asked about material specific needs, there have been so many discoveries in the process of putting things into space that have changed our lives. From things like ballpoint pens, where the ink moves through capillary action, that came from need for users in zero-G environments, right? Because in zero-G environments, capillary action still works, whereas gravity doesn't. Velcro came out of the space programs as well. A whole lot of adhesives, ceramics, all came out of the space program as well. So there are so many discoveries that these problems and these challenges have sort of offshoot that on their own, I think they're valid. But then added to the fact that it allows us to go to space is just, that's absolutely the reason why we should be doing these things.
Interesting you mentioned about perspective, because I've read about it a lot. That Brian Cox made a statement that every politician on Earth should be put to space for 2 days. And that will change the perspective of how they look at the world. And then once they come back, they might operate in a very different way, and the way they shape up the policies. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I haven't yet been lucky, but if I were to have this opportunity to go to space, I think it would be
knowing that there are chances of less return.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I would actually go to another planet and live there if I were given the opportunity, because I think, I don't know, there's something inherent in us that tells us that the whole universe is way, way larger than this small planet that we're on, and we should take care of our planet, but we should also want to go explore.
The first all-civilian unmanned space mission done by SpaceX. So I keep talking about it in a way that the way they showed in the documentary is that you get a call one day. And so there are different ways that they choose those 4 people, which is very interesting to see. And then you get a call one day, and the director of the space mission is on the other side on the video call, and he says, "You've been selected to go to space." So if that call comes to you, you would say yes.
Yes. Unfortunately, they won't give me that call, though. I'm not as fit an astronaut as I should be.
No, but there was a 50-year-old woman who went there. There was a girl with a prosthetic leg which went there, but obviously they cleared all those trainings.
Right.
But
no, in fact, one of my biggest disappointments when I was a kid and had to wear glasses was I couldn't be an astronaut, because at that time you had to have perfect vision to be an astronaut. Then next disappointment was I couldn't be an Indian Air Force pilot either, because that was my second option from being an astronaut.
Now you spoke about a couple of applications, right? One is surveillance. One is that there have been inventions. So any more applications for spending billions of dollars on space tech? Or talk about any portfolio companies or companies that you're watching very closely. What are they trying to do in this space?
So I'll keep the portfolio company part aside so I can sort of clearly do justice. But the first and foremost is a lot of the work that's happening in space is actually going to change how we transport ourselves. Because again, just like those intercontinental ballistic missiles, can destroy a continent on the other side of the world in 30 minutes. If we can produce a transportation system, we can travel from one part of the world to another in 30 minutes. So imagine going from Australia to New York in 30 minutes. How will that change the world? Today, that is a 20-odd hour flight, literally, right? And it's the longest flight ever and whatnot. That's going to change. That's going to happen. We're going to have a space-based transportation system that is going to completely change what we think of as far and near. Everything is going to be near. This is Bangalore, so I can talk about Bangalore traffic, right? So going from here to Whitefield will be as equivalent as going from here to Australia, right?
That's a pivotal moment. It's like invention of aircrafts.
Right, exactly. So it changes everything. It changes the way in which we think about trade, in terms of closeness, in terms of, we can't go to war with the people who are only 30 minutes away. That I don't think that will happen. So it changes a lot. So transportation is one.
Okay.
The second is understanding of resources. The Earth is a very, very complex system, and we don't have actually much of a good understanding of how Earth operates, or how does our weather operate, how do our oceans operate. So once you have all of these assets in space, you get a very unique and differentiated perspective of what happens on Earth. So we understand Earth a whole lot better. And then the third part, which I was talking to you about, was space is also a very unique environment. It gives us an opportunity to create things that are much, much harder to create on Earth. And the fourth, which is even more sort of out of this world, is there's trillions and trillions of dollars or rupees worth of material in space, precious material. There are more diamonds, gold, and almost every mineral you can think of in space in terms of these asteroids that are just floating around than here on Earth, right? So why are we pillaging our nice, poor planet here for those materials when we can create an environment out there that can harvest or mine these things? So space mining, I think, is going to happen very, very quickly, very soon, because the economics of it are just so clear. You know the price of gold here, or you know the price of platinum here. And if I can get tons and tons of platinum for a reasonably well understood cost, the economics work out.
So considering all of this, do you think that the government should be involved in this, or we'll have private players? This is a lot of power, right?
So that, I think, is a competition that is going to happen. So
Competition amongst governments?
Everybody. And that's, I think, the challenge. So again, think about our history, right? The East India Company was a private company, right? Chartered by the British Crown to go out and explore and exploit Earth's resources. So unfortunately, I think, and I'm no expert, but I think this is the pattern that we're going to follow, unfortunately, in space as well. So private companies will first start figuring out ways to exploit. And once they discover that they're able to exploit these things, nation states will then get worried that they will become significantly overly in control, and therefore, control and nationalization will happen. Science fiction talks about this as, you suddenly either the corporates find a way to disconnect themselves from the Earth and create only space-based civilizations, or they become susceptible to the controls from Earth, and Earth then starts, sort of putting its control on. So that's why I said science fiction is not too far from what we see is about to happen. Nation states will go to conflict, I think, on this, unfortunately. But
so it's difficult to fight with an enemy which is half an hour away. But you are creating a very different kind of of a power struggle.
Yeah. So the conflict would not be where we try to kill each other. This will be the competition conflict where where you are trying to go hunt that asteroid. I'm going to send another group that's going to hunt the same asteroid so that I can get there first and whatnot. And
just like US and USSR were trying to do that whole first to space and
yes, exactly. So I think there'll be a healthy competition. Will there be military use? Unfortunately, I think there will be, but there will be more from not wanting to destroy mass populations and more for these kinds of resources.
Are you still very much updated with what NASA is doing? Any new things that you can share which we don't know about?
I don't know if they're new, but so one of my colleagues at NASA was the person responsible for the helicopter that went to Mars. So it was amazing to see. Not only did we put a rover on Mars, we put a helicopter in that rover, and then helicopter had a 90-day mission, which is well past its age. But I think the way NASA managed to do that was so exciting. We were flying an aircraft on another planet. I mean, just think that through. We have trouble flying aircraft on our own planet, but we were flying an aircraft on another planet, and that helicopter was doing a very unique version of science where we were looking at it near. So a lot of what we saw on Mars before was we had satellites around Mars. We have satellites around Mars, and we have rovers that are on the ground.
Yeah.
There was no sort of slightly higher perspective, and this was the first thing that this helicopter offered. So I was very excited to see how well that went, and it's almost now a given that we're going to send more aircraft to Mars.
You have some classified information. Is aliens your subject, Area 51?
So funnily enough, I think, a lot of people ask this particular question to people who are at NASA, and I think you're going to be very underwhelmed by what we think of as aliens. Alien life forms will most likely be single-celled or multi-celled, small organisms than, little green or blue men that you will see on other planets. But I think I go back to what Carl Sagan said. If we don't find aliens, it seems like it'll be an awfully large amount of wasted space out there. So I believe we will find them, or they will find us whenever it is a time of their choosing. But do I wish it happens in my lifetime? Absolutely. Because I don't believe in the vast the grouping of people believing that aliens are always going to be against you. I believe that if they are a superior enough intelligent race, they are not coming here for conflict. That they would be vastly superior, and so they would need to come kill us. They would need to help us join this greater galactic community.
I think we are going into a very different direction, which is I don't want to go into anything else. This is like,
by the way,
space.
All of this is also going to change commerce. So bringing it back to what Jar is doing or saying, if you think the value of money, what it is today, imagine, like I said, trillions and trillions worth of material out into space. Everybody should be investing in anything that goes to space. And so this is actually the next planet-wide transformational opportunity. So if India is going through the current transformational opportunity for investors now, the next planet-wide transformation, I mean, the multi-trillionaires, or I don't know what the next level beyond trillionaires are, but if there's a word for that, but that wealth will get created once we move to space.
And that is why Rocketship.vc. It's such an apt name, right? So
thank you. I named the firm, so I take full credit for only the name.
Okay. You want to talk about any companies that you are watching in this space? So I'm excited about something.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah,
so
private companies are building something. Yeah.
So the one that I'm most excited by is portfolio company AgniKul. AgniKul is doubly exciting in the sense that not only are they doing this realization of this vision of going to space in a very, very cost-effective manner, they're also from my alma mater, IIT Madras. And so that's a double sense of excitement about what it is we're building. And so this truly sort of is the clearest example of how you can actually take confidence in the fact that you have the ability to build these things. So AgniKul's founders were not like, large they're deeply experienced in space and whatnot. They really were sort of very, very both ambitious, but also very excited by this opportunity, wanted to build something that was going to be world-changing, wanted to solve this problem. And the simplest thing they came up with was this amazing idea. Why not just 3D print an engine, right? And that's the core innovation of AgniKul. It's a fully 3D printed engine that takes about 2 days max to build. And
can we 3D print an engine?
They 3D print an engine, and it works, and it works phenomenally well. And so this is the excitement, right? So you have a company that has completely changed the paradigm of how you think about a rocket, right? Rocket engines take months to build. Here is a way in which you can build it in 2 days, and it's a very different kind of engine as well. The most common failure mode in a lot of our previous space-based mishaps were things like valves and O-rings failing and so on. Well, this is an engine that doesn't have valves for the most part, right? It's a full engine. The valves are outside and other connectors, but the core engine itself has no seams, no connection, no welds to fail, nothing.
So why don't we build other engines, like aircraft engines first? So 3D printing, because that's a lot of manual work there. Right?
Absolutely. So it is coming. The large companies, GE and Rolls-Royce and others, have started building 3D printed parts. Not the whole engine yet, because the whole engine is still way too complex for today's 3D printing technology. But 3D printing parts is already happening a lot in the aerospace world, because it's a much faster, much more accurate way, foolproof way of building things.
I was at Infosys in the engineering department, and Airbus and Boeing were the clients, where we used to do CAD designing for 1:1 ratio for the shop floor engineers to start assembling all of that, right? So I think all of that will disappear anyways. But yeah.
No, there's more to build, because once you start 3D printing these components, there's more kinds of things you can. Engines have sort of grown only one at a time. You take one engine, and then the next generation, 10 years later, you improve it. Imagine that if you have this capability, you can have engines that are tuned to your use case from the smallest to the largest. So anyway, I think this is actually going to not necessarily make those jobs go away as much as create new jobs for people.
Okay, let me put you on a spot. One more opportunity that you think is a space that young founders or experienced founders can exploit in space tech?
Communication. So it is still mind-boggling that we are still not able to communicate wherever we are, anywhere in the world. And that, so Elon Musk thinks that Starlink is going to be the solution. I don't think necessarily there is a one-size-fits-all kind of solution, right? Today, look at our own communication. It's not a one-size-fits-all. We have many different devices in which we communicate, or many different ways in which we communicate. There's email, there's phone, there's text, there's social media, whatnot. So I think communication is something that I think can completely change the way sort of people work together, but also requires a lot of innovation in terms of, okay, if you were video conferencing, is Starlink going to work for video conferencing? Well, maybe not, but for phone calls, maybe it will work, and so on. So I think there's a lot in communication that I think entrepreneurs can solve for.
You seem to have. Do you regret leaving NASA? Because this is such a fascinating topic for you. It's an area of interest, and then Rocketship. So do you miss being an operator there?
So NASA is one of the best places I've had the opportunity to work until I moved to startup land. So NASA is great. It was the realization of a childhood dream, and I really liked my time there. But I think I love startups a whole lot more. Cool. And that 0 to 1 transition, I don't think there is. I mean, you have to be a founder to understand this. It is like jumping off a cliff with no support, nothing. You're giving off all the comforts of everything you had before. A steady job with like a guaranteed salary. What will people think? What's going to happen? Are you going to fail? There's so many questions. But at the same time, the rush of building something and saying you built it and it works and have users who use your thing, I don't think that rush comes from anything else that I've seen. So
no, very relatable, because look at successful founders. They go back and build again 0 to 1, right? Everyone young who's starting up thinks that, I'll get acquired, or I'll just sell the company, or secondary sales, or whatever. They'll make money.
Right.
But what do? They again build 0 to 1. Right?
Right.
So that's why it is exciting. That's why people do it again and again and again.
Yes, absolutely. That's not to minimize all the pain and suffering that goes into building a company.
Yeah.
But I think nothing
But they still after building the company, they still want to make another company.
Exactly.
Which is 0 to 1. Right?
Because nothing replicates that 0 to 1 transition. And every problem has so many different aspects to it. And like I said, there's no safety net. It's if there's a problem, it's yours to go solve, right? Nobody's you're not waiting for somebody else to solve. You just go do it. And so it's a certain kind of mentality or mindset that's so freeing that, I see a problem. So I have, for example, in my startup, I put up, cube walls. Why? There's nobody else to do it. I have to go hire somebody to do it. It'll take 3-4 days. That's time that my startup I don't want to waste, right? So I got the rest of my team members. We all had screwdrivers or the power tools, and we put up our cue balls, right? I set up our first health plan for our startup. Well, again, why? Because nobody else. Right? You have to do it. You're a founder. You do everything, right? So literally cleaning the office is something founders have done.
So the engineer and operator in you is still alive after being.
Absolutely. In fact, I think I'm a better VC because I have done these things, because I can understand, empathize what most founders are going through. And in fact, most people that I speak with, they can sense this, that I'm not coming across. And it's just not me. It's my fellow partners as well. All of us at Rocketship are founders. We have had that operator-founder experience. And that resonates a lot with the companies that we invest in, because they can see we are not the traditional, usual MBA VC type. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we are not those people.
What are your thoughts about the Indian space program?
I think the Indian space program is at the cusp of a significant change. I think our portfolio company AgniKul, Skyroad, and there's others, right? Duva Aerospace, a bunch of other space-related companies. They're all coming up because the government has decided to start both supporting this sector, but also deregulating it. And that, I think, is going to allow for a significant level of entrepreneurship. And so for examples are, we have companies that are doing a lot of sort of analysis of resources, water, pollution, and so on. So there's lots of aspects that we are using, mainly ISRO launched satellites, which again, ISRO is a phenomenal organization which has been very successful. But now I think you can unlock a whole lot more, right? If you are, say, a Reliance, and you want to go assess the methane sort of output of all of your plants, you can put up your own satellite and have that be monitoring all of this. and some company has to go build, launch, and do that. And so I think this is going to change how companies think of both their own resources, but also it's going to create an ecosystem, specifically an India-based ecosystem to put things into space and manage them. And once you can do it for India, I think you can do it for the rest of the world as well. And so India will be exporting this capability, not just based on the few examples, but throughout the world. Anybody who wants to launch a satellite, maybe we will be the country who is going to launch it and manage it way better and more cost efficient than anybody else can. So we will hopefully one day give SpaceX a run for its money.
At $100 per kg for payload.
Yes. Imagine that.
Well, that's a great number. I mean, that's a great comparison to understand how cost effective it is, because we keep hearing about the cost effectiveness of the things that we've done, but $100 seems nothing. Like, we can go. I'm 75.
Right. I mean, obviously that is an oversimplification.
Yes.
There are things like.
Okay. No. So you were speaking about climate. So climate change is another one of your interest areas, and where you are looking from a Rocketship.vc point of view.
Right.
So, okay, decode climate change for us. Let's just shift from space tech to climate.
So I think the most common question people ask about the climate change is it real? Is this something that's made up or not? And I think, at least from most people's perspective today, this is a settled question. I think climate change is real. It's well past any historical norms or seasonal changes that, at least in recorded history, that we have been able to see. And so change is happening, and change is happening more rapidly than we expected. What this is doing is actually two things. One is it is causing a whole lot more disruption than we previously anticipated. Wildfires, larger weather events. These are all disrupting people's lives way more. And so we need to address this. If we are to continue to live and expect the same quality of life on this planet, we need to address this. The second, and the often less talked about aspect, is a lot of this is spurring change that is actually much more cost efficient, much more economically efficient, much using of less resources. We never had the impetus before to go to these directions or think about these things as rapidly as we need to, but today we are being forced to, and that actually is changing the way.
So you think there is business sense to do work in this space?
Absolutely. In fact, while the problem is very real and we need to solve it, the business is not too far behind. The simplest example is EVs, right? I mean, it is costly today to produce an EV, but if you look at it at a operational running cost, EVs are way more efficient than gas or petrol engines, right? Now, the cost of creating that EV needs to come down close enough and it's very close at this point to beating a regular car. But once that happens, why would you want to have a regular car?
Yeah.
And when the EV is actually cheaper, better, faster to operate. So I think that transition is happening in certain areas, but soon I think it'll happen in a lot more. And one particular idea that I've been excited by, we haven't had the opportunity to invest in this idea, but I've been excited by, is something as simple as concrete. Here in India, we use concrete a lot. The rest of the world, more steel construction than concrete construction, but India, we use concrete a lot. Making of cement is one of the biggest causes of carbon dioxide being released into the atmosphere. So there are now ways in which you can create sustainable concrete that actually locks in all of this carbon dioxide and produces equal, if not harder concrete. Imagine if we have that. Not only is India transforming itself in terms of its infrastructure, it's now going to be building it in a much, much more sustainable way. I think that changes the equation significantly, and I'm very excited for that. The other area that I'm very excited for and I think needs to be solved is water. We are humans, we can starve for days, weeks without food, but we can't survive without water. And water is still something that we have not had good, reliable access to for the entire planet. And so ways in which we can get clean water, I think, are very important. And we are seeing a lot of innovation in that area as well.
Like, do you think it's something like a government and a private player partnership, or do you think that startups and private companies need to do a lot more work here and then?
So this one's a little harder to answer. Space at least had a reasonably clear way of thinking about it. There was a lot of capital involved and whatnot. Climate change is, I think, much more immediate in impacting people's lives. I mean, people are going to suffer a lot from floods and hurricanes and whatnot, and governments need to act.
Yeah, so because the impact at scale that the government machineries can create is something that private players might not be able to create. Right?
That's true, but I'm also talking about the fact that the negative impact is very real and very immediate. And so whether they can do something or not, they have to be seen to be doing something, right? And something has to be done. People cannot be suffering from flooding all the time, or earthquakes, or wild weather events, or high temperatures and whatnot. So I think governments need to act. The challenge with governments is how they choose to act. Whether can they be the place where innovation happens and they come up with a solution, or they create the environment in which private players come up with solutions. And I think in climate change, the second method is less likely to succeed in certain areas and more likely to succeed in other areas. So, for example, in terms of changing how we create policy and construct roads and infrastructure, that is, I think, very much something governments should be involved in. But examples like a new kind of energy efficient air conditioning or water, those I think government should set standards, but then private companies can very much go ahead and solve that.
So the innovation can happen in the private space.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there are certain areas which are very large capital expenditure, but also very necessary to be able to directly protect or impact citizens. Those are places where governments need to act directly. Where innovation, I think, can happen over a slower sort of pace, but more importantly, there's something that private companies can innovate on their own. I think governments should support.
Do you think governments are doing enough world over?
Oh, absolutely not. I think the answer to that is very clear. In every climate conference that we go to, enough is not being done. We make promises, we're not doing it. And I think part of it is also this unevenness with which the globe is treating climate change. I live in the US, and the US is the largest polluter in the world, right? And the US is also the largest market in the world. Are we spending enough not just to clean up our own emissions, but clean up the emissions that we have historically put out? No, right? So it makes sense that all nation states needs to start stepping up and doing not just what they can, but way more than what they can, because they historically have contributed to this problem.
So there's a debt.
So there is a debt. There is absolutely a debt. But unfortunately, this debt is so large and so enormous and politically not very conducive to conversations about that people don't want to or can't, from a political perspective, solve for these things. So I don't think nation states are doing enough. I don't think countries are doing enough. But at the same time, I think the urgency is increasing.
There is talk at least.
There is.
Is it fair? Is it fair to ask developing countries to focus here, because the developed countries have done their bit, and now there is a lot of talk about should we focus on solving the core problems first, and is it fair to demand developing countries to put a lot of effort on climate change?
It's a controversial question because I think there's many nuances to it. So the Western world, where so-called developed countries have solved some of these problems, they've reduced greenhouse gases going on. Should developing countries be still replicating the old methods in which large greenhouse gases are going out? No, but does that mean that they're able to immediately switch all of their national infrastructure to clean burning fuels and non-polluting things? No, as well. So unless the people who are demanding or advising this transition are able to offer support and benefit or even technology for free to make this transition happen, I don't think it's fair to make that request. At the same time, is it fair to at least advise the country saying, hey, look, this isn't the right solution? I think that's at least fair enough to share their expertise, saying, look, we experienced this, so we have changed our own way of operating, and therefore you can learn from us. That I think is okay. But I think most developing countries have learned that lesson way faster than the developed world has. I mean, I don't know if many people understand this, but when I was a kid, we were recycling pretty much from day one. I mean, I don't know, there's a kabaddi wala would come and take all of your newspapers and cans and bottles. Recycling is not a new concept for us when you're in an environment, right? So I think we as a developing world have been very conscious about how we use our resources already. But at the same time, we have certain constraints of our population and our geographic location that we are not able to get to where we need to. So I think it's just a matter of time, but we will. And we will come up with our own Indianized solutions that will help us transition.
Let's move to Rocketship now.
Yes.
I can go on and on about your NASA. I know after that you've spoken about your fondness for building 0 to 1, and that's something that you value more. And there's something very interesting that we came across, quant-based evaluation system, and if you can talk about that.
Absolutely. So this was the genesis of Rocketship. So my fellow partners, Anand, Venki, and I started the idea for Rocketship back in 2014. So each of us were, we were all computer scientists. We are all multiple-time entrepreneurs. And so when we had transitioned from our previous sort of endeavors, I had sold our startup to Square. They had sold the startup that I was a part of to Walmart and stayed at Walmart for a few years and then come off from there. So when the three of us got together, there were many ideas that we were sort of tossing around. They wanted to do investing. And the reason for that is they thought that, that gives all of us an opportunity to be participating in startups and yet not necessarily directly be involved in them. And we were also thinking about how we would do this differently. Because we are computer scientists, we always want to see there's a computer science angle to this. And we were very inspired by the quant funds on Wall Street. There are these funds that use AI trading strategies to make very fast, very quick trading decisions. This is different from this other area called high frequency trading, just to be very clear. Those operate in like microsecond trading and try to arbitrage price changes. This is more of trying to use algorithms to figure out how to predict price movements, which is a good company, which is not, and then make trades based on that. So that idea seemed to work very, very well. And there are firms called Rentech or Renaissance Technologies or Two Sigma that make billions of dollars every year with literally no risk because it's a proven strategy. So that strategy, once it started, has been adopted by pretty much every Wall Street trading firm. So everybody has what's called a quant desk where they use these strategies. So we wanted to see if that strategy would apply to our area of interest, which is startups, right? So that's how we started.
Okay.
Again, computer scientists who didn't know much about how this would all work, we said, okay, let's try it out. We collected a lot of data. We started writing our own algorithms. And a lot of people come and ask us, like, who's writing all the algorithms? Like, we are the
VCs were writing algorithms too.
Well, we became VCs because we wrote good algorithms, just to be very clear. So we wrote these algorithms. We started finding amazing companies. Started writing personal checks, and it looked like this was going to work very well. So we said, okay, let's see if we can create a fund out of this. Will people trust us enough to give us money to actually invest through this approach? So we went and asked a bunch of people, and in 3 weeks, we raised $40 million. And we hadn't actually gone out to the market to raise this much money, just to be very clear. We were like, we don't know whether this is all going to work out. So please just give us the minimum amount of money so we can test this idea out. So we set our goal as 15 to 20 million. But everybody thought, A, that this was a great idea, and B, we were the best team to execute on it because we had the founder mentality, the computer science backgrounds to go execute on it. So we raised our first fund at 40 million. And so to describe how this works, we collect as much data about startups as possible. This is now we are talking terabytes of data. We get 1.5 terabytes of data each month. And so we currently have somewhere close to 200 terabytes of data.
This is happening real time with your model.
This is happening real time throughout the month, as in data is coming in every day to us. So all of the data is collected, transformed, cleaned. And this is one of the hardest computer science problems that we have had the opportunity to work on. Because think about it, you're getting many, many diverse data streams coming in. And they sort of all relate to a company, but we don't know exactly, is it one company? Is it one company with subsidiaries? Is it a company that changed its name? Or is the name, is this a single company but has the same name as another company in another country and completely in another business? So there's a lot of complexity, a lot of unstructured data that is coming in. And all of that has to be clean, made into a coherent data set. And then you then start looking for how do you predict which one of these companies is
So
going
this
to be
is
successful.
country agnostic, sector agnostic.
Yes, country agnostic, sector agnostic, and at its limit, even stage agnostic. Though what we very rapidly realized was that we had to narrow the scope of the problem a little bit to really make traction. So we said, okay, let's look at it. If we go too early, there's not enough data. If you go too late, it's obvious and the prices are too high. So there's a point of economic efficiency, which is a point where the risk of failure is reduced from the data, but the valuations have not gone crazy high. So that point of efficiency we found was somewhere close to the Series A mark, just before the Series A. And Series A, again, is a nebulous term because valuations range all over. But what it means is that there's somewhere around the area in which product market fit happens, business models are sort of established, and yet valuations have not gone crazy. And so the algorithms we built were training our system to identify companies that are highly likely to be in that situation and have the potential for success.
So is that the first level of filtration that you deal with?
Yes.
The algorithm tells you this is what it is.
Yeah. So how to think about this is on any given day, our algorithms are giving us a ranked list of companies. And these are, in our mind or in the algorithm's mind, the best companies in the world today for us to go out and reach out to and invest.
So that's your top of the funnel.
That's our top of the funnel.
Okay.
So from there, the human partners and human associates reach out to the company, contact them, talk to them. And so in example, Jar, we wrote to Nishay and Misbah and said, hey, our algorithm found you. We think you're doing something fantastic. Come talk to us. And so
you found Jar through the algorithm?
Absolutely, we did. And it's one of our, highly valued success examples where we show, look, we can find these kinds of companies. They're on the other side of the world. They're building something, but our algorithms found it.
Wow, the Nishay Misbah never told me this. So this is a VC firm which identifies and then approaches that.
Yes. And in fact, you should be proud of the fact that you guys all are at Jar because we think, our algorithms thought that you were going to be fantastic. So, and that has stayed true since then. So our algorithms find you. We then connect you as a company and say, okay, so what's going on in the company? Because from the algorithm's perspective, what we have guaranteed is something is going on in this company. It has a high likelihood of success. But of course, there's a lot of difference between using data from outside the company and finding out what's going on inside the company. So we talk to the company multiple times. We ask for their internal data. What are the actual revenue metrics? Because we don't see the revenue from inside the company. That's a closely guarded secret, right? So we get the data from inside the company and slowly build our understanding of, is this company good? Which most likely our algorithms will predict a good company. But does it have the potential to be a great company? And so that's what we as human partners do. We try to make that assessment between good versus great. And then if you are a great company, we try to convince you to take our money. So this is the other aspect of VC that I find very different. The best companies, you are begging them to take your money, right? It's the power dynamic is not where hundreds of companies are coming to you and I hand out money based on who I think is. No, our algorithms find the best companies in the world and we are oftentimes begging them to take our money.
So if you look at your portfolio, how many companies approached you and how many companies your algorithm?
Over 95% is through our algorithm.
Wow. So this basically the startup of its own, right? You can outsource this.
So actually we've been asked that question. So yes, so we are one of the only VCs in the world to have an engineering team and have an engineering meeting and algorithms are built. And like I said, we're all computer scientists, so our hands are full with the algorithms. But we've been asked, do we want to outsource this? And our answer is always the same. If you think you have a winning strategy in your hands, why would you give it to somebody else?
Yeah.
Right? So we believe this is our edge. We believe we have the opportunity at any given time to find the best companies in the world, and we want to take advantage of it. So if you as an LP, give us your money so that we can make more money for you. So that's how.
I think it also helps you to invest in multiple countries because it's otherwise very difficult to understand the culture and the markets and everything in I think you have 15 country portfolio already.
Yes, we have investments in 15 countries. And so the way to think about this from an investor perspective, from a limited partner perspective, whose money we manage, is to think of, there's this common saying, there's always a bull market somewhere, right? But where? How do you find out where the bull market is? Most of the time, most people don't have a coherent strategy of identifying where the next crop of startups are happening and coming from. So I'll give you an example. Our algorithms showed us that India was a great place to start deploying capital late 2015 onwards. And it could have been earlier than that, but 2015 is when we started formally running our fund. So immediately we started finding companies in India that we thought were very exciting. Most people think our investments in India have to do with the fact that we are of Indian origin and have deep network. And that's only a small part of the equation. The large part of it was our algorithm saying the best place in the entire world to be deploying capital was India. So our first fund is about a third in India. Our second fund is majority in India, right? And I think we caught the wave right. I mean, Jar is an example, but there are many more examples. We are investors in Moglix. We are investors in NoBroker. We were investors in a wide variety of companies that are that represent this new wave that is going on in India, and all of that happened through our algorithms.
It's a pretty interesting portfolio. You should actually have a town hall of Rocketship portfolio companies. Do you think, counter question, do you think you missed out on some companies because the algorithm didn't pick it up?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So the algorithms are not all seeing. They don't necessarily recognize every opportunity. And there are certain opportunities that even if the algorithm found, we as humans failed in our decision-making process and identifying what the algorithms did. But there is one thing I'll share with you that that makes us a little bit more confident of what we are doing. Every time the algorithm told us not to invest in a company, but we thought we knew better and we decided to go invest in it, we have been wrong. So we have learned a humble lesson that sometimes computers do know something more than we do.
Do you think it is being overused and misused?
So first, a little bit of history, right? So this whole thing that happened with large language models, it's a phenomenal development, but it's in a development that has been sort of in the works for like the last 20 years, right? We've had natural language models that are consistently kept building on their size, and then suddenly a tipping point did happen. Don't get me wrong, the size of these models, there were a whole host of research that said the larger the model, it's going to overfit and not produce the quality. But you know, the kudos to the folks at OpenAI and Google, they decided that a bigger model will jump through some of these challenges, and so they built this. So a real revolution did happen, but it was a natural consequence of an evolutionary change that was happening for the last 20 odd years. But that then led into a hype cycle, and everybody likes hype cycles, and so suddenly everything had to be about AI and large language models and so on. So a lot of people have taken advantage. They've taken advantage in 2-3 different ways. One is just the moniker of AI or large language models, just applied to anything and everything. And if they are lucky enough to catch an investor who is feeling this whole pressure and fear of missing out, of not being in some of the best brand names, they get caught up in these ideas and move on and invest and so on. So I think that in the long term is not going to serve either party well, neither the startup nor the investor. The second class has to do with using AI for what I typically call our low-hanging fruit. And the clearest example is there were startups that were building on top of OpenAI that OpenAI on its next dev day just completely destroyed by saying, because it's a trivial extension of what OpenAI already does or any of these large models do. So I think that class, again, is getting cleaned up. The true innovation is actually coming from using AI combined with a deep knowledge of a product or a problem. And that's really where a lot of innovation is coming. But again, like I said, that's the core of our investing thesis. We want to invest in companies that are not just using the moniker, not just solving trivial problems, but are truly creating solutions that could not have been done. And the missing piece was this gap that the AI is or in large language models are bridging today. The core of that sort of sustainable growth model is the ability to have your own data or your own insight into the problem you're solving.
So what do you call your algorithm, as AI or pattern recognition? Is it getting smarter day by day on its own and making smarter decisions?
We believe so. And it's a combination of the data that's improving and also our insight. So we are in I think the 7th generation of our own algorithms since we started Rocketship back in 2014-15. and it started off with one algorithm. Today we have, I think, 6 families of algorithms, each trying to, it's very similar to that blind man and the elephant thing again. Each algorithm is trying to assess a different aspect of a startup, because some startups are going to grow rapidly but may not have other aspects to them. So using a one size fits all doesn't necessarily work. And other questions like, how do you evaluate a B2C company and a B2B company, right? There are different kinds of companies. So we have families of algorithms, and one of the key ingredients of our, touchwood, potential success has been the fact that we, as both the investors and the algorithm creators, had this rapid feedback loop. Every time the algorithm proposed a company that I was not excited by, or my fellow partners were not excited by, we would go through this process of thinking, why? Why is this happening? Why should we? Why are the algorithms proposing this? And then that feedback immediately goes into the algorithm, changes what is going on. And so that's what I mean when I say we are in our 7th generation. We have learned, along with that algorithm, what good companies look like and how to look for them.
Do you think there needs to be government regulations coming into do you think the world is moving too fast in the world of AI?
Again, hard question to answer. I'm an
Not
investor.
a question, it's a discussion.
Right, no, but I'm an investor, so I always want things to move fast and make changes happen. But I don't think I'm qualified enough to say whether there is real risk in how fast these algorithms are moving. I've always been a big proponent of artificial intelligence going to AGI, to artificial general intelligence, because I think I'm excited by the applications of such systems. But can they be used for nefarious and negative purposes? Absolutely. Am I worried that one of those systems is going to take over humankind? Not really.
Okay.
While science fiction has shown Terminator and all these other movies, I'm not worried about that personally, but I could be wrong. So that's why I'm saying I am not best qualified to answer this question, but I'm an optimist that both the developments in AI and the pace at which we are moving will be net positive for us. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be cautious. So I think governments should watch. I don't think governments at this point, at least in my opinion, should make any regulations, but they should watch. They should be careful about what happens. A good example is what governments have done with genomics. They have said that you can't clone humans, right? Or you have to be very careful in those situations. Does that mean that people haven't tried or will not attempt? I think they are going to. But with this sort of a wait and watch approach, I think there is at least a little bit more scrutiny. So I think that's what governments should do. Should adopt a clear wait and watch approach so that nefarious uses can be seen early enough and prevented, but not regulate.
All right. Closing notes. Tell me 3 things that you find different when you come to India after some time, or anything that you observed is so rapidly changing.
So it's not so much so rapidly changing, but things that I'm very proud
Bullish. Okay, proud of.
Proud of because they were actually blots on our country's perception for a large number of people. The first was, even in places like airports, there would be this prevalent smell of phenol, especially from restrooms and whatnot. Today, every airport I go to, none of that. This looks like a top-class airport. In fact, these airports are better than some of the large Western city airports. I'm so happy to see this change because there is no, I can complain to other people in other countries saying, look how bad your airports are, because Indian airports have gotten so much better. So airports are a big change.
Fantastic.
Yes, what a colorful, vibrant airport, right? Fantastic place. So that's one thing that I'm very happy and proud to see. The second is the energy. Every time I've come to India, the energy is almost exponentially higher. Like there's so much activity. People are so much more confident. There is so much more variety, whether it be in terms of food, whether it be in terms of, TV shows, whether it be in terms of games. I mean, IPL, what an amazing change that has brought, right? Like there's so much activity and it's exponential literally every time I come. So that's been very exciting. The third is the not so great thing about India, which is there are some things that I still see that don't change. Traffic is bad. construction is a little haphazard. I mean, you just have to step around Bangalore streets to see how haphazard our construction is. People are building it in all kinds of different ways, and this whole jugaad mentality of like, let's put a small, So I think that is something I wish we would do a better job of.
That's again a mindset change, which is...
I don't know if necessarily a fault though. Just to be very clear, we have to do the best with the resources we have access to, and we are. But I wish it was just done with a little bit more sustainable thought in mind, so that we are not building just for 3 months or 6 years or whatever, but building it for longer periods.
So you're a cricket fan? IPL, you watch cricket?
I'm a cricket fan because I'm an Indian. So you have to be. I mean, I think
CSK?
you're required to, right? Absolutely, I'm a Chennai boy. So CSK all the way. So sorry RCB, but CSK all the way.
Good. Sailesh, thank you so much. I can go on and on, but I've taken a lot of your time. So
it's my pleasure to have this conversation.